Peace, everyone. Wherever this meets you, just lighting some Palo Santo to bless the space between us. Wherever this finds you, I know you can't smell this or bring this into your breath, but hopefully the aura of just breathing together, witnessing each other, just pausing, going a little slower, bringing more intention into this moment. So, deep breaths. Just wherever this meets you, finds you, just I want to offer more reading, more invitation from this beautiful, beautiful book, Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown. Just let this. And I'm just gonna read. I'm gonna offer my own imperfect thoughts around and through, but I'm just going to offer this as a reading. I've broken up a couple of pieces from a specific chapter. You'll notice, or you might notice, that I have one or two other videos previous from the first part of this book, and my hope is to have a handful of videos ongoing as I move through it. But I find that that her creative work, that the work of this invitation is so timely, so timely. I'm recording this video on March 3rd, 25th, 2020, and so we're in the middle of COVID-19 and all the complexity of what that's bringing up within us, around us, and so before COVID, obviously beyond COVID, where we are now, all of it, universally, I feel so strong about how we imagine and how we cast vision and how we allow ourselves to be stewards of the creative forward, of what can we create together, what can we be mindful of that allows us to imagine a future and a way of being that is more loving, more generative, more supportive, more honoring, more healing, more nurturing. You know, what things aren't allowing us to feel deeply connected to each other, deeply connected to the natural world, deeply connected to to all that moves within. And so I think just this invitation of emergence is everything to me right now, and I imagine for the rest of my life on this planet. So I'm just going to read from these words, and we'll be in them together imperfectly. I just invite you to breathe them in, let them move through. If you need to pause the video and just kind of listen to it again, because these are going to be deep, complex topics, frames. So not linear. This is a kind of a circular, kind of moving invitation, and it's going to meet each of us differently as it needs to, because we each have our own makeup of life experiences, things we've gone through, things we strive for, things we ache for, and we need all of these different pieces. And how are we coming together? How are we trusting each other better? How are we healing pain? How are we moving and casting into a more loving time? So this is from the chapter Interdependence and Decentralization, Who We Are and How We Share. So I'm just gonna offer some different snippets from this piece. This is going to start with a quote by Morgan Mann Willis. Just grounding together wherever this meets you. Just connecting to your breathing, grace, openness. I believe in the honesty of trees. I, like many organizers, have spent a lot of time processing the notion that anything worth its outcome involves everyone's priorities, desires, visions, and perspectives in every phase and around every decision. I look at the anatomy of trees as one of nature's examples of successful organizing that realizes that our power is in our ability to both be fiercely centered and grounded, but also infinitely reaching towards our unique sources of energy, light, and growth. I'm going to read that again. I look at the anatomy of trees as one of nature's examples of successful organizing that realizes that our power is in our ability to both be fiercely centered and grounded, but also infinitely reaching towards our unique sources of energy, light, and growth. Each tree's elements are reliant on one another, but totally unique in form and function. There is no competition or pressure to be the root or the trunk or the buds that bloom. Each tree is a universe, a master delegator, a puzzle, and a puzzle piece. They have encouraged me to not worry so much about making everyone, quote, feel important, unquote, and to focus on how to create systems and support efforts where everyone is important and clear on how their work is unique, crucial, and totally interconnected. That's beautiful. By Morgan Mann Willis. So this moves into some of the text that Adrienne Maree Brown invites us into related to interdependence. Most of us are socialized towards independence, pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, working on our own to develop, to survive, to win at life. Competition is the way we hone our skill and comfort with the opposite of mutual reliance. We learn to feel proud about how much we achieve as individuals and sometimes to actively work to bring others down in order to get ahead. In a capitalist society like the United States, every aspect of our survival, from food and water to healthcare, childcare, and elder care, is based on our success at being an individual in the world. Do we compete well enough to make good money so we can live a good life? Competition exists all over nature. Being the alpha is a big deal. Competing in mating and survival cycles can be understood as natural. In the absence of reasoning, it appears to be a viable way to manage community power dynamics. Humans are unique because we compete when it isn't necessary. We could reason our way to more sustainable processes, but we use our intelligence to outsmart each other. We compete for fun, for ego. The idea of interdependence is that we can meet each other's needs in a variety of ways, that we can truly lean on others and they can lean on us. It means we have to decentralize our idea of where solutions and decisions happen, where ideas come from. We have to embrace our complexity. We are complex. While many of us articulate a yearning for a more simple life, we continue practicing complexity as our evolutionary path. As I have deepened into a regular meditation practice and regular retreat times, I have grown an appreciation for simplicity, while also understanding that I enjoy it as a visitation, that being in a complex life is actually intriguing and delicious to my system. And that I have to understand that it isn't just my own complexity at work, but everyone I am in relationship with, creating an abundance of connections, desires, interactions, and reactions. I have begun to wonder how it looks to practice complexity as a sacred path, as interdependence. Of course, whenever I think things like this, I turn to Grace Lee Boggs. I find that she was there ahead of me on the wall of her home is a sign. On the wall of her home is a sign, quote, building community is the collective. Building community is to the collective as spiritual practice is to the individual. You can see that. Being a part of movements is complex work. when I think about this, I think it invites me, at least, because I use that word a lot, like these are complex. This is complex times. And when isn't it complex? Like, when isn't the way the trees and the birds and the soil and the sky, like, when isn't a sunrise or a sunset not complex? When it just screams in diversity of color and expression. And so it just leaves so much room for, to me at least, uncertainty, mystery, spaces between. And so it just asks us, it asks me, I think it asks systems that we have become so accustomed to, it asks us to be open, to be casting into creative time, to be letting go, to like release the grip. What are we clinging to? What are we holding on so tightly to? And where does that impact? How does that impact how we relate to each other? How we honor what's just real inside of us, whether that's just rage and anger, or it's sadness and sorrow, or it's joy and dreaming, or it's lightness, or it's sexual expression, or it's, all of these different things. That complexity as a spiritual practice, or as a sacred path. Oh my gosh, I love the invitation, and it's so imperfect for all of us, but I love the invitation. Do you already know that your existence, who and how you are, is in and of itself a contribution to the people and places around you? Not after or because you do some particular thing, but simply the miracle of your life, and that the people around you and the places have contributions as well. Do you understand that your quality of life and your survival are tied to how authentic and generous the connections are between you and the people and place you live with and in? I'm going to read that again. Do you, do I, do we understand that our quality of life and your and mine and our survival are tied to how authentic and generous the connections are between you, between me, between us, and the people and places you and me and us live within and around? Do you understand that your quality of life and your survival are tied to how authentic and generous? How authentic and generous. And so I think, specific to this time, but I think in any time when we are just sitting with ourselves inside of these different spaces with less doing and social connecting, literally being ordered to be in quarantine in many different settings. Depending on where we are, a lot of us are out in the workforce and are still being encouraged to be 6 feet away, even if you're out working and in transit and doing things. Like, there's all these different, it's different wherever you are. And how authentic and generous the connections are. How authentic and generous are they between you and I, between the people in our lives, and between and around the places we live? Are you actively practicing generosity and vulnerability in order to make the connections between you and others clear, open, available, durable? Generosity here means giving of what you have without strings or expectations attached. Vulnerability means showing your needs. Are you actively practicing generosity and vulnerability in order to make the connections between you and others clear, open, available, durable? Generosity here means giving of what you have without strings or expectations attached. Vulnerability means showing your needs. Just breathe that in. Breathe it out. We're just we're being invited. We're being invited. This isn't a new strategy of perfection and to-dos and tasks. This is invitation to ask deeper questions, to examine our aches, to consider, and not even consider, just to be met to meet costs that keep us from connecting and being generous with each other. What things occupy our days, what relationships to money and to sustaining and holding on and clinging keep us from connecting, keep us from being generous. This is a poem, I think it's written by Adrienne, by the author. Love is an emergent process. I stand before my love and let the tendrils unfurl. In every direction I am whole and becoming. Time is one instance, examining itself, mirrors, seeing each other and blushing into eternity. I am the ant who carries grandfather to the grave. In my palms, you lift the next day's meal, enough for everyone we know. We love in this rhythm, leaving home and returning on the wind. Love can't look away from itself, vibrating in the cell, fluttering breathless into sustained migration. I feel you, like dust feels water, and remembers the home galaxy. It appears nothing is new, never was, and nothing is truly massive when seen in its wholeness. Until I took this breath, repeating the miracle, I didn't know I would say it, could not have known. I look to the sky, taste the wind on my tongue, and fling myself into the pattern. When I forget, when I think the end is near, I realize my insignificance, as important as yours, and begin to love again. Peace, everyone. Peace. And begin to love again. Are you actively practicing generosity and vulnerability in order to make the connections between you and others clear, open, available, durable? Generosity here means giving of what you have without strings or expectations attached. Vulnerability means showing your needs. So let's breathe that all the way in. Hold it. All the way out. I was going to continue reading, but I think I'm going to leave us with this. I'm just going to leave us with these invitations. The honesty of trees. Observing and discerning our relationship to competition. Embracing complexity, a sacred path of complexity. Building community is to the collective as spiritual practice is to the individual. An understanding that our quality of life and our survival are tied to how authentic and generous the connections are between us, between the people in our lives and the places we live. So let's just hold it, move with it. I would love to hear what comes up for you, what things stir in you, what are some specific examples of some of this, what are some ideas for how this works in your life or in your thoughts or in your heart. I will do another video in the next day or two on the rest of this because there's some really beautiful stuff that just continues to unfold in this book and in this invitation. So. Emergent Strategy, and Adrienne for your beautiful creative work. I will link the book and her work wherever I post this video. If you are curious about going deeper just into this journey of authenticity and healing and complexity, be invited to come alongside some of my creative work at Intrinsic Paths. Just follow along, invite people in, become a patron. Thank you, patrons, for allowing and making all of this possible. You are the reason I can be creating in this way. So I am grateful for each of you, wherever this meets you. Peace, friends, as we open our hearts, as we open towards what's possible, as we open the creative portals in each of us to be more open, more authentic, more undefended, more just, more human in this life. Peace.